Hello, this is Dot, and I wanted to make an Unasked VR to a very good video about when a tarot reading is not a tarot reading. A video made by the Curated Shelf, where she posed this, I think, important and interesting question for discussion, and she was very articulate and also very polite in her video, so I hope you don't take this that I want to argue with your arguments, or that I, God forbid, don't that I disrespect your opinion or something like that. I just wanted to give like my take on this question, and I like to play the devil's advocate or give different perspectives. So let me start from the top. That what is a tarot deck? So often we say that a tarot is not an oracle. I don't agree. I think every tarot deck is an oracle. Not every oracle is a tarot deck, but every tarot is an oracle because it gives some kind of message. We want to find meaning in the card and convey the meaning to the querent or to ourselves. So from a definition, I think that every tarot is an oracle. So what's the difference between a tarot deck and the oracle deck? We often say that the tarot is a system. So this is a system of meanings, a system that contains usually the major arcana and the minor arcana. And in the minor arcana we have 4 suits. So we have the suits are assigned elemental associations, and in the suits we have 10 number cards and 4 court cards. Sorry. So this is usually what we say that is a tarot deck. But we have to remember that the assigned meanings were all done by people. There isn't any kind of ultimate meanings that the card has to convey. We have to remember that the tarot deck came from a card game, a tarocchi game, or so this is the Italian name, there is the German name, I forget it now. So all the decks, tarocchi decks, then we had the Marseilles decks, and then came the occultists that got interested in the tarot decks, and they decided, maybe the card can convey some message, maybe there are some symbols in the cards, and maybe we can even illustrate all the cards. So we get the Waite-Smith deck, and this is the deck that I have here, and after we get the Thoth deck. So this is another very well-known tradition made by Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Harris. And I don't have a Marseilles deck to show you, so this is the closest that I have. So this is a standard playing card deck, and this is the pip deck that I have. So this is the ukiyo-e tarot. So in the minors we have pips, not illustrated cards. So sorry, I don't have Marseille deck, but even in those 3 traditions, so Marseille, Waite-Smith deck and Thoth deck, we had other traditions that are not really used now or not so popular now. So for instance, we have the Etteilla deck. I'm not so knowledgeable on the history of tarot, but we 100 years ago and earlier, other people were also creating their own systems of meanings to the cards. And even in the Marseille style of readings, Marseille tarot decks, you can get different meanings for a card. So I don't agree that a tarot system is a well-set system of meanings because the meanings can change. So my first question here, and maybe I'll start flipping through the cards so you have something to look at. So the first question that I want to pose is, why when we get a deck that we call a non-traditional deck, like a deck like I have here, so this is the John Bauer Tarot. So why when we get a deck like this that deviates a bit from the system that we know, we call this deck that, this is not a tarot deck because it doesn't follow the tradition. However, the tradition evolves, and who is to say, where is the police to say that this is not a new tradition? Why are we so quick to argue that if the meanings differ, if the illustrations differ, if there aren't, for instance, even the, not only there are not the symbols, for instance, present in the Waite-Smith deck, or this is not a pip deck, but an illustrated deck, and the scene is completely different. Why do we say that if the scene doesn't resemble the meaning that we are accustomed to see, this is not a tarot deck? And I've yet to find a deck that doesn't come even with a little guidebook where the author gives their set of meanings. So usually we get at least some keywords, and even sometimes we get 2 or 3 sentences about the card. And I'm not in the tarot for long, but from reading books, I learned that before, this is how people learned the tarot. They didn't get, these big guidebooks where every symbol is explored, where you get very extensive discussions of the art of the card. No, they were learning by memory. They were learning the meanings, set of keywords that 3 of Wands means assessing how your what's the word? Assessing how your, oh my god, means assessing. So you are waiting to the results to come, and you now want, and you are assessing at the beginning of an enterprise, and you are assessing how it goes, for instance. So I even gave you the sentence. So maybe, here this is Ace of Discs. So this is the Ace of Pentacles. So the keyword for this would be source of material things, or maybe opportunity, or opportunity for success, for example. So you get a set of keywords, and this is all you knew about the cards. So I'm coming back to my first question. So why do we say that this new deck that comes, a new deck created by someone, has to follow one of the traditions? And if it doesn't follow the tradition, if it gives a different set of meanings, or if the illustrations differ, we say this is not a tarot deck. And my second question here to ask you is, if you want to, if you get this kind of new deck, non-traditional deck, I'm using the air quotes because this name for me is a bit, has a little bit of bad judgment that these new decks are somehow worse because they don't follow the tradition. So the non-traditional decks, so when you were learning tarot, you accepted that now you have to learn the symbols, learn the illustrations, learn the meanings. And when you get a new deck that differs from what you know, why are you not wanting to require the same amount of time and study to learn the new deck? Now, no one stops you from designing your own set of symbols set of meanings for the symbols that you see in the card. Because I know that we say these traditions, we say about these traditional decks that they have these books where you can go and read about. And now with this new deck, we only get this little guidebook that doesn't tell you much. But no one stops you from creating your own guidebook to the deck. No one stops you from finding even your own meanings, completely different from the meanings in the guidebook that the author gave. Because in every illustration like this, or like this, from the John Bauer Tarot, so every illustration has a wealth of symbols here. It's only up to you if you want to give time and thought and study to study the illustration, study the symbols, and you can either go through one of the traditions that you think the deck was influenced by, or you can create completely new, something new, completely new system of meanings that you think this card. So the Two of Swords here, it doesn't need to mean, this card doesn't need to mean it's indecision. It can mean something different. Maybe for you this illustration means something different. It reminds you of something new, and now you create your own guidebook, your own set of meanings. You ascribe meanings that you now used when you use this deck in your readings. So what I want to give importance again is, why do we feel that the traditional decks need the study and the non-traditional decks don't need the study? That they don't need some kind of, some amount of time to get to know, some amount of time to learn what is depicted and learn or create your own meanings for the cards. And now I want to give 3 perspectives, I could say, to using a non-traditional deck, and saying that I still feel that there is nothing unprofessional in using these decks, and they are still tarot decks, and I would still feel that these are tarot readings and not an oracle style readings. So the first perspective is coming from someone who learned the one of the traditional systems. So they learned, for example, the Thoth deck. They know what the symbols mean. They know what each card means. So they have this web of knowledge that accompanies all the cards. And now they get a deck like the John Bauer Tarot or the Hash Tarot that you showed in your video. And they don't see the meanings there. But they can still follow their knowledge, so the knowledge of the Thoth deck, and they can either expand on this knowledge and try to find a connection between, because I believe that always you can find a connection between 2 things. So when you start with the meaning that the card should, at least you think, should show, and the illustration that you get, and the illustrations somehow doesn't remind you what it should show, but instead it reminds you something different, you can find a common point between those 2 things. And now you have your new meaning. So you can say the deck was influenced by, for example, the Thoth deck, but it shows a different aspect of that traditional meaning of a card. And if I would go to a tarot reader who uses a non-traditional deck and use the deck in such a way, I would say he's still, or she, they are still using the tarot system, but they are going from their starting point is a traditional meaning of a card, but it's expanded or it's influenced by the art of the card. And so now a second approach to a professional approach, I still think, to using such a non-traditional deck is that the illustration is something second to the meaning. So this is the type of reading that comes more from the Marseilles tradition, of the tradition of reading the playing card decks. So here, what is depicted isn't really important, because important is the important thing is your general meaning of the card. So you know that this card, the Nine of Hearts, means something for you, and it doesn't really and it isn't really important if the hearts are arranged in this way or in another way, because even in the historical Marseilles decks, there wasn't a set of rules how the cups or how the swords were arranged. So what is in the first thing for you is the meaning that you assign to a card, and now the illustration is only something nice to look at, or maybe it gives, you know, something nice for the querent to look at, or something nice for you, the reader, to look at. Of course, you can still be influenced by the art, so it would go along the way, the first way of reading, that the first perspective on reading. So it would, so you start with the Four of Coins here, and your general meaning, for example, for the Four of Coins is material stability, but you see this image here, and now the image here influences your general meaning of the card. So maybe instead of this Waite-Smith illustration, you get I don't know, maybe let's imagine someone playing in a pool of water. So some children playing in a pool of water, instead of, you know, this someone sitting here with this Four of Coins. So you get influenced by the children playing in this water, and you think, so this is material stability, but you also use these material things that you have, so you take advantage of them. So you're in the pool of water, so there's a lot of it, so you even don't have to think about it if it ever ends. So this is almost like an ocean of material resources available to you, and you use them, you take advantage of them. So I hope you get the gist. So the illustration can influence your meaning, but not necessarily. You can only start from the meaning. And of course, you can use the set of meanings that you learned, or you can use even the new set of meanings that the author of the new deck has provided to you. And the third perspective of a reader, and I still think this is a professional tarot reading, is when someone thinks that the message that they get is external. So they establish a connection with the spirit of the cards, or other some higher powers, maybe some guides, some angels, gods and goddesses, higher self, you know, many, so some external source is giving them answers through the cards. And here, I don't even expect from this person that they need to learn the traditional deck. I agree, this is more like a Rorschach test, but this is what the reading almost should be, because I think for this kind of reader, what is the most important is to tune into their intuition. So there isn't any kind of objective truth about the cards, or objective, a state of facts that this should mean this and this should mean something different. No, if they feel that the angel that is talking to them wants to look at this pentacle here, and it reminds them of a, I don't know, maybe reminds them of a plate. So now I'm thinking about dinner. So they say, today you are going to have a dinner with your family. And there's going to be a catastrophe. So there's going to be a huge argument, and people will, a conflict will start, and So if they believe that this is what their intuition is saying to them, then I will still think this is a tarot reading. There's, because they're using a tarot deck, so I don't expect from them even to have this, that they need to have the knowledge. So the knowledge of what the deck should mean, what are the expected meanings of the cards. And of course, you as a querent should know that this is the type of reader you are going to. And I know this kind of reading, there's the ethics of this kind of reading is harder to grasp or harder to tell when the person is telling you the truth, or when they are trying to deceive you. But you have to accept it, that this is, you can't tell, you can't fact check if someone has a connection with some angel. You can't fact check if they hear some message coming from the cards. Of course, if this is the message that pertains to your future, you can fact check it after. Did this event happen or no? Did you have an argument with your family or not? But in this kind of intuitive readings, I think this is still a reading, tarot reading, because they're using a tarot deck. And honestly, sometimes it rubs me a little the wrong way when people say that this is a worse kind of reading, or that you should, for instance, use I don't know, maybe all the knowledge of the tarot. You have to, for instance, use the ascribe elemental associations, that the cups mean water, or the air means swords are air. But if we look at different decks, for instance, in the Etteilla deck, the suits are switched. So I think in the Etteilla deck, the swords are water and cups are air. I think something like that. So even the fundamentals of the tarot deck, like elemental associations, can be completely different. So what I want to say here is that I think even if the person isn't using the traditional associations or traditional knowledge, they're using a completely non-traditional deck and using only their intuition, because they're using a tarot deck, I would say this is a tarot reading. And a side note, I think the traditional oracle decks are even more constrained than tarot, because usually when we use an oracle deck, there's only one keyword for the card, and often in the guidebook we get a direct message for what the card means. And in comparison with the tarot, even if we use one system, like the Marseilles system, we get a set of meanings. And the meanings are more, have different shades of, of gray in these meanings. So for me, the tarot system, so the tarot decks are more expansive than oracle decks. Oracle decks are more focused on one thing, and one card usually is focused on one thing. And in the tarot cards, I think one card can talk about many things and still be focused on, so it's still so the starting point is one meaning, but it expands into a web of different set of pathways where you can go. Okay, so that was my long tangent about intuitive readings. And there's the fourth perspective, the perspective that I use, because I maybe not only, but I can use this perspective. So this is a perspective of a intuitive reading, but without consulting some external force, some spirit of the cards, or some higher spirits, higher forces. So it reminds, yes, the Rorschach test, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because I believe there isn't, similarly to the external forces, to the reading that uses external forces, I also believe that there isn't any objective truth to the cards. I believe that there isn't one message that I need to find out today when I get this card, this Knight of Wands, for example. There's a plethora of messages that I can read from this card, and whatever I read is good. And I can use the message that comes from me in a completely intuitive way, that doesn't use the tarot system at all, but I would call it a tarot reading because I'm using a tarot deck. Or I could use some kind of tarot knowledge that I have from the Waite system, some kind of set of meanings that I read about in a book, or that I created myself. So if I'm using a deck like a John Bauer deck, I can make my own meanings and use these meanings. And I believe it's still is a professional tarot reading, even if I was reading for someone else, because this is what I today see in this card. This is what came to my mind, and I think this is a good message, because in the same way, there isn't any way to tell if the message is good or if the message is bad. If the message, there isn't any kind of wrong or true message. And of course, I can connect the non-traditional meanings with the I can connect the traditional meanings with the non-traditional illustration and devise some kind of new meaning about this card. So I can use all the all the ways that I explored before of reading a non-traditional deck, and it still be a tarot reading for me. And after, I can of course create my own guidebook for this non-traditional deck and follow only these meanings, because now this is a new system. So I devise a new system, and so I get my fourth system to use in my readings. So I have the Waite-Smith system, the Thoth system, and I get the John Bauer system. So I'm starting to ramble, so maybe this is a time to end this video. So I want to repeat the question that I started with, that we should probably ask ourselves every time we get a deck that differs from what we already know? Why do we don't want to learn this new deck? Why do we need to put it into box that this should be a Waite-Smith deck? And maybe this deck isn't for us. If we don't want to learn the deck, if we expect Waite-Smith associations in every card, maybe we should only use Waite-Smith deck, or decks that are very close to this tradition. Maybe only this kind of decks work for us, and just other decks aren't for us, because, you know, we feel comfortable in this tradition, in this set of meanings, and there's nothing wrong with expanding this set of meanings, but we shouldn't call those decks that they are not tarot, because they don't follow the meanings that we already learned. And the second thing that I want to repeat is, why do we question that artists today cannot create new tarot system? Somehow I don't see that people question that Aleister Crowley wasn't allowed to create new set of meanings, or that Arthur Waite wasn't allowed to create his own system of meanings to the tradition, to the Marseilles tradition and other traditions that he was influenced by. Somehow we accept that they were allowed, but the creators today aren't allowed. So, for example, I know some new tarot decks add even a fifth suit, and I think there is nothing wrong with adding a fifth suit if they think that it expands the tarot deck and it expands the possibilities of interpretation. One of the most popular tarot decks that has created a new set of meanings is, for example, the Dreams of Gaia, and I also hear that people say this is a tarot deck. This isn't a tarot deck because it doesn't follow any tradition, but it does follow the rules of a tarot deck. So it does have major arcana, it does have minor arcana, the four suits and court cards. Yes, the meanings in the minor arcana are new. The major arcana figures are different than these figures here in the usually used traditions. So the Marseilles tradition, or the Waite-Smith tradition, or the Crowley's tradition of the Thoth deck. So the author of this deck devised a new set of major arcana, and I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a new system of tarot, and I like the new decks because this is like reading a new book, or this is like finding, and so it now gives me a new set of meanings that I can work with, or that I can devise my own set of meanings. It's a way of creating a new tool to use. In conclusion, I hope I haven't ruffled anyone's feathers, or I'm not trying to invalidate others' opinions. I just wanted to offer some perspective on what I think, and what I think are still professional ways of reading with a tarot deck. So this is like a food for thought, and I'm not trying to change others' way of seeing. I would like others to participate in the conversation, and would love to read or hear or see in video format what you think, what is your answer to this question. posted by the Curated Shelf in their excellent video. When a tarot reading is not a tarot reading, or it stops being a tarot reading, and when a deck stops being a tarot deck and becomes a more general oracle type of deck. So thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear from you. I'm sending you much love, and bye bye.